Hi, I'm Councillor Mike Hardacre and I'm the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills in Wolverhampton. You'll all be aware, as I am, of the massive changes that have had to take place in people's interactions over the past 6 months. And that's been no different for all our education and skills agencies like the Adult Education College, our private providers, the college, schools and other institutions. But with great change comes great opportunities. We want students and those who wish to expand their skills portfolio to have every opportunity. There are huge electronic opportunities with all of the providers I've already mentioned, and I urge you to take part in the skills packages that are outlined in the conference that you are about to watch. It is in your interests, it is in the city's interests, and it is in the interests of all of us to highly develop all our skills in order to ensure that we'll continue to live in a growing, thriving, multicultural, multi-ethnic city.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Skills. Hopefully an informal but lively discussion about what's happening in the world of skills here in the city of Wolverhampton. My name is Mal Cowgill. I'm the City of Wolverhampton College Principal, and I'm here today with a number of providers as well as a senior member of the staff from the West Midlands Combined Authority. We're going to focus today clearly on the impact that COVID-19 is having on the local providers, and hopefully we'll have a really lively Q&A discussion around that, as well as some background information on that from Julie, who is from WMCA, as I said. We are going to be talking about what's happened over the last 6 months to us as providers. I mean, clearly we've been shifting to online learning, and we've also just had students coming back, and that's put extra pressure on us because as well as coping with providing a service to young people and adults, we've also been coping with our own financial issues around COVID and the impact that's had on our budgets. And so we want to really try and get to the bottom today of what we can provide for local employers and for local residents to make sure that we are actually meeting their needs and your needs as employers, your skill needs, so that we can actually relight this city and push on through into an economic recovery for not just Wolverhampton but also for the West Midlands. The first person actually that we're going to turn to is Julie Nugent, who's the Head of Skills at the West Midlands Combined Authority. And Julie's going to give us a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of context, Julie, if that's okay, about what's happening out there, and then we'll move on into the providers and how we're reacting to that. So, Julie, over to you.
Great, thanks, Mel. So if I take us back to January in the days pre-COVID, I think as a region we were starting to see some real positives happening around our skills and employment agenda. As a combined authority, we're charged with supporting and enabling economic growth in the region, but doing that in a way that really reaches out and brings benefit to all of our communities. So clearly for us, giving people the right levels of skills and opportunities is crucial to that. So back in January, things looked like they were going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. We were seeing productivity levels improve, employment levels increase. We'd started to see qualification levels also go up. So things were heading in the right direction. That's not to say we didn't have our challenges. Clearly across the West Midlands, some communities are much more likely to participate than others. Even across the sub-regions, we see higher living wage, for example, higher wages in Coventry and Warwickshire compared to the Black Country. So we had our issues, and youth unemployment was, again, something that we were focusing on then. But things felt broadly like they were moving in the right direction. Lots of exciting things on the horizon, HS2 development, all that came with that, Commonwealth Games, City of Culture. And then clearly COVID has kind of struck. And in many ways, it's made our challenges even bigger than they were before. So we talk a lot about how we use skills to support economic growth. And essentially, our skills strategy boils down to some very simple features. We want more people with skills, more people into jobs, more people into good jobs. It's kind of that simple for us. But clearly, we saw huge response from colleges, providers, adult education providers in the early days and weeks of this, having to lock down, having to move lessons online, having to support students who were worried and anxious about the future. I have to say across the West Midlands, our provider base, our colleges are fantastic in doing that. But people have had their learning disrupted. So as we're starting slowly but surely, hopefully, to emerge from this, one of the things that we're very keen to do is how do we make sure that we're supporting our businesses, supporting individuals to get skills where they need to get back into work really, really quickly. So that's meant a change in emphasis. A lot of it is still about good jobs for people, but it's looking at those sectors of the economy that continuing to recruit. So for us, digital has continued to be a sector that's survived, has probably slightly flourished during the last few weeks and months. So for us, more important now than ever that we're giving our young people and our adults the skills they need to take advantage of those digital jobs, particularly those who've been in sectors that have struggled or have been people that have either been furloughed or have made sadly unemployed. So making sure we're getting people right for the jobs of the future. At the moment, it's still a little bit the calm before the storm. We've had our unemployment figures out again today, so we know there's a challenge, but we know whilst the furlough scheme is still in place, that actually the full scale of that challenge remains to be seen. So I think what we're really interested in doing, Mal, is making sure that as a training sector, all of those resources are there ready to support businesses, to support individuals, to start taking advantage as we kind of emerge from this crisis, as we hopefully emerge from a recession. We've got quite a lot of tools at our disposal. Our adult education budget is about 135 million across the West Midlands. We have retraining pilots for things like digital and construction where we can do tailored support there. And also we work very closely with our local authority partners and with the job centres. So new schemes like the government's Kickstart programme, which are there to support employers with incentives to take on young people for a 6 months kind of work placement. Again, making sure that we are helping employers access those, but also for those individuals, they're getting the right skills, the right experience to hopefully emerge from this stronger than ever before.
Thank you, Julie. That's, I think that rings true with me in my position. And you mentioned the Kickstart programme. Our audience is employers. Is that one particular initiative, or is there anything that you really would like the employers today to take away that's available for them to work with a training provider to kind of improve on this position?
Definitely. So Kickstart is being launched in 2 phases. So for those that don't know, it's a programme very similar to the Future Jobs Fund that some of us might remember from a few years back, where government will pay the wages for a 16 to 24-year-old to have a work placement for 6 months, and you also get a bursary of about £1,500 to support with that young person's training, advice and guidance. If you're a large employer with more than 30 placements, you can apply directly to government to get that funded. If you're a smaller employer, what government is suggesting is you work through an intermediary. So that could be Wolverhampton local authority, it could be a Chamber of Commerce. At the moment across the region, we're just collating the different organisations that want to be intermediaries. But already we're collecting names, so if people are interested, get in touch with your Chamber of Commerce or your job centre to register it. And the idea is that you will offer a young person experience in the workplace. Government will subsidise that placement for you, so it's doing right by individuals, but hopefully helping businesses as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Hopefully the audience has taken something away from that. I'm going to turn now to Joanne Keatley, who's Head of Adult Education in the City. Welcome.
Thank you.
As a major provider of adult education, you've seen what's happened in the city with COVID in the last 6 months or so. Could you give me an idea of some of the challenges that you've experienced and then how you're hoping to deal with those challenges?
Yeah, sure. I think, first of all, thank you, Mal, and thank you, Julie. I think that was very insightful, if challenging, the picture that you painted for the region. And I'm aware, Wolverhampton has really quite ambitious plans to relight the city and get into recovery. And I think one of the key pillars to that relighting the city is around creating more jobs and creating more learning opportunities. And I guess our job as providers is to ensure that we are creating those learning opportunities. But I guess those learning opportunities need to be the right learning opportunities, and they need to be those opportunities that businesses need us to create so that they have the skilled people that they want for the jobs. And they may be different jobs, so people may need retraining. And I suppose our job as the college, as a training provider, or as adult education, is to be that supply side and get that right. And when I think about adult education, I think about getting the right curriculum to the right people, but also how important, when I think of challenges, Mal, really, I think of how important it is going to be for us to be able to be flexible and to be adaptable. Perhaps we can't continue to do the same things going forward, and that we're going to need to look at where our strengths are and how to play to our strengths into sort of the relight plan. And when I think of adult education, we provide about 30% of our provision to young adults, so people under 30, which are one of the key groups that have been particularly adversely affected by COVID. But perhaps, that's where we need to look to do more. I think for us as well, in terms of mental health and well-being, we're uniquely positioned as an adult and community learning provider, and we're expected to play our part in making sure that there's opportunities out there for a very broad sector of residents to sort of look after their health and well-being. We target people who are unemployed, people who have low income, but also people with mental health issues, students with learning disabilities, and particularly one of our key things is in deprived communities. So we're particularly looking at a real focus in areas where deprivation is particularly high, where there's multiple factors. And I think that will stand us in good stead to meet the challenge. I think that is where we need to put our sort of emphasis. I think when I think about the challenges we've had, going through these past 6 months, there's 4 that spring to mind. The first really is a current one. So this is about adults coming back to learning. I was just discussing this with Julie beforehand and saying, I sense a reticence from adults really, which I can well understand. We're teetering on the edge of a local lockdown. We're talking about not gathering in groups of more than 6 people, but also trying to say, come back to learning. I think school children and I think young college students sort of get that. I think as Adult Ed, we've just started a bit of a campaign on Twitter, on Facebook and on our website, sort of showing some pictures of our environment, sort of displaying how safe it is, how we've adapted the environment. And I do think probably, Julie, a national sort of campaign about, we're open for learning for adults is going to be important because the emphasis has been on college students and schools, and I don't think adults see themselves necessarily in that bracket, so they may think that if we go into a local lockdown there'll be no adult learning. So that's one of the challenges, I think, probably for all of us. The second is about community venues. We do a lot of provision. It's key to us to widen participation in those areas I've just talked about. And we partner with schools and community venues to put on learning. And as you can imagine, schools are not that receptive to additional pressures such as family learning, where parents come in and learn. But I found really that where one door opens, or when one door closes, another opens, because the Strengthening Families hubs in the city, there's 8 of those. They're very strategically placed. They're part of the council's sort of portfolio, and they're open for business, and they cater for the parents that we want to reach. So we are able to put on sort of provision there. But yeah, there are challenges, I think, to community provision. We used to do a programme with a hospital for the rehabilitation of people who suffered brain injury. That's those sort of, that's well-being, but that's not an option going forward. I think another key one, which is called by many names and which is probably familiar to us all, is around sort of digital inclusion or digital poverty or the digital divide. And I think we've learnt through lockdown, that's been exacerbated and magnified considerably. And there are a lot of people working on this agenda. But in terms of adult education, we did a survey of our students after they'd been learning in lockdown sort of conditions. And, over 50% of them said they felt they'd learnt less, which probably is what we would expect during lockdown. And 30% of them, when we looked, one of the questions we asked, what equipment do you have at home to learn with? And only 30% said they had a laptop or a PC. And only 14% said they had data. That crystallises the challenge, really. That would be a challenge if we went down into lockdown again, but that's a challenge for people generally, isn't it? About how they search for jobs, how they socially interact, etc., if they don't have digital skills. So we're looking a lot at the way we assess digital literacy, the way we embed it into our curriculum. We've doubled the number of qualifications we're offering in the digital arena up to level 1, which we operate in. So I think that's a challenge that we're dealing with. And the last would be a really obvious one around work placements for students. You know, we have
Sorry.
students who are trying to finish off their teaching assistant qualification, but they, you know, they can't get back into schools to do their final assessment, and new students coming in, you know, wanting to do health and social care or teaching assistants, etc., who need, you know, you need to practice your craft really, don't you, to be confident in what you're doing, and the qualifications that they gain, you know, in the medium term, are the integrity of them, I think, is not going to be that substantial if they don't have work placements. And the plea there, I guess, is to businesses to some degree to think about still offering work placements and the importance of that, both for young people and for adults. So, you know, I think those are the key sort of challenges we're dealing with, which I think lots of providers are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary, John. I mean, we're seeing some of that in the college, the work experience, and I'm sure, Chris, you're seeing that as well, in terms of making sure we can balance people getting the education that they need, and, you know, let's get everybody back into education, but our overall priority is still safety and making sure that everybody is safe, and the workshop provision or the work experience is something that's really key to a lot of our young people and our adults, whether they're apprentices or just kind of general students. And that you're absolutely right, to employers out there, please, you know, this is about relighting the city, isn't it? And if we can get our young people and adults into, not just into jobs, but into apprenticeships safely, then, you know, that would be you doing your piece as well. It's a difficult time, Joanne, lots and lots of challenges, but, you know, education's also about the positives as well, isn't it? And about, we have quite a lot of fun in what we do as providers. So, is there anything
you do, Mal?
I do, yeah, but I've been told to behave today, so.
Okay.
But is there anything that you've come across in the last 6 months, the experiences that actually you think, actually that's a real opportunity now, and that's something that we really can kind of grasp?
Yeah, I don't think the benefits outweigh the challenges.
Okay.
You know, I absolutely don't, but there have been benefits. I mean, for us, I think it was grasping the pace of change.
Yeah.
You know, we did things that we have been talking about and planning, but, you know, there's this reticence to do something if you can't do it perfectly, and yet lockdown forced us. So, you know, we haven't done online enrolment effectively up until now. You know, and now we're doing it. It's not perfect, but we're doing it. We'll never go back. No. You know, we're offering careers information, advice and guidance online, by telephone, etc. We didn't do that before, and now people have got a choice. Would you like face-to-face? Would you like online? Would you like a telephone conversation? So, you know, those are the kind of benefits. And in terms of blended learning for you know, teachers delivering, in lockdown we used lots of different platforms because we weren't ready, and so we relied on the skills and the platforms that tutors were comfortable with. And they did an excellent job, did their absolute best in the circumstances. But, you know, now we've got the opportunity to capitalise on that and actually have a, you know, a structured sort of digital transformation type plan with good CPD behind it, because tutors need to be, you know, really well skilled, and to do that's not going to happen overnight. You know, they need a really purposeful sort of CPD plan. So I think there are benefits.
Yeah. I mean, Julia, looking from a regional point of view, did you see some of that happening then on the ground?
Definitely, just echoing what Joanne said, I think that move to more online provision actually has huge potential for us. So one of our challenges in the West Midlands and in Wolverhampton as well is, yes, we need to upskill our residents, but not just young people, not just unemployed people. Actually, one of our biggest challenges is how do you get out to people already in the workplace who've got low skills, who may be low paid, who may be in areas of the economy that are vulnerable to future automation, and who'll often struggle to get to a full-time course at college because the old-style night school is less prevalent, a lot less prevalent than it used to be. And actually what we've seen during the last few weeks and months is courses move online, even some of the construction trades, which I was like, how are you doing that? But with the kind of online simulation, with being able to operate heavy plant machinery in safe ways, in ways that are absolutely kind of translatable to the building site. And so suddenly that opens up learning to a much broader cohort. So, you know, whether you've got caring responsibilities or you're holding down jobs, I think this has taught us that actually we can open up those opportunities, that ability to develop your skills to a whole new range of people out there. So I think we've got to be optimistic about that too.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I mean, we've noticed that as I mean, what we basically said is if we'd have planned to do this over 3 years, we'd have failed, and we did it in 3 days, and it almost worked. So, you know, there's a lesson to be learned there. Isn't there? Thanks, John. I'm going to turn now to Chris Luty, who's BCTG, a major provider, not just in this city, but as a major provider in the city. Chris, what's been the impact on your business and on your training over the last 6 months?
We saw, obviously, like most sort of training providers, saw a sort of sea change in terms of how the environment we were operating sort of altered. We're predominantly an apprenticeship AEB provider, and I think we particularly saw that apprentices broadly fell into 2 camps. Yes, there was quite a number of apprentices that were furloughed, but also there was quite a number that continued in their roles, but actually the sort of work pressures and personal circumstances very often sort of made it difficult for them to follow their course in a sort of traditional way. I think really sort of echoing a lot of the comments that have been made so far, that certainly the key thing for us was the quite rapid transition to online delivery. It's something that BCTG have been investing in for the last sort of 2 or 3 years, and it was something that we were happily sort of working on developing in quite a measured sort of way. We realised very quickly that actually that was the one way in which we could not only support the apprentices and the young people on our programmes, but also provide a way of ensuring that the employers were able to get the support and help that they sort of needed in those sort of circumstances. We actually did a lot of work, particularly sort of supporting and working with SME employers, not only to sort of retain apprentices, but obviously helping them sort of work their way through what grants and what support was available, and it was certainly a broad sort of offering. Certainly, we've recognised that, Mal, like what you sort of mentioned there, that actually probably in the space of 3 or 4 months, we developed our online learning offer, probably equivalent to sort of 12 or 18 months further down the road. I took the strategic decision early on to effectively not furlough any staff, and we repurposed those almost as sort of the trainers into sort of content producers for the actual programmes themselves. And that's working really well. As we know, content is king very much, and it needs to be a resource and a material that's not only appropriate, but something that actually meets the needs of that particular individual and that particular employer. Certainly, where we're at the moment, we have something like 4,000 apprentices nationally. We have been, I think, quite effective in terms of supporting these apprentices throughout the whole process. Something like 94% have stayed on programme, continued to progress at a reasonable sort of pace. We actually surveyed all of our apprentices and all of our employers back in June, really to get a flavour of what they thought of the process and how well and how effective their needs were being met. And something like 86% were saying that actually the online learning offer was either as good or better than what they'd sort of experienced previously. I think we really began to learn about the flexibility and the sort of bespoke nature that you can create within this quite quickly, that allows us to provide a very tailored programme, as I say, not just for the individual, but for the organisation as a whole, really. And picking up on Julie's comments a moment ago about the sort of direction of travel in terms of skills needs in the region. Again, over the last 12 months, we've invested in developing our digital delivery capacity, particularly at sort of level 3 and above. Construction, again, is something we recognise that is absolutely core to the economic recovery. There's so many opportunities out there, not just for young people, but sort of adult reskilling as well. And again, that's something that we focused heavily on so far. And interestingly enough, I agree, Julie, with your comments that certainly construction skills can be delivered effectively through an online model. And again, we're sort of experimenting and testing out different ways of doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got some plant training going on, light plant, and that can be done online. You've got to balance it. But I think, would you say that's the key opportunity that you've seen then as a company, rather than as a training provider, that the move to online learning is a shift that you need to make?
Absolutely. And again, it's about the. I suppose it's on several levels. It's from a quality perspective.
Yeah.
That certainly as a provider we've got a clearer sort of line of sight in terms of the quality of the actual provision, the quality of the programme that the learner's actually receiving. I think there's also as well a far broader way where we can work with an employer to provide them with a more up-to-date sort of picture of how their employees are developing and how those skills are being enhanced. And again, clearly, employers are interested in how are those skills helping their business and helping their bottom line. And I think really with the smart use of online learning, there's all sorts of ways in which you can add value to that process.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned quality, because a lot of people, when they talk about online learning, they think, well, that's dumbing down, that's making more money. But it's clearly not, isn't it? And the backup is the employers do find
absolutely, Matt. And what we learnt very quickly is you can't take necessarily traditional training resources and just sort of zap them up and sort of put them online. There has to be a whole sort of separate sort of mindset. The comments you made about sort of CPD of staff. That actually you can have a very good trainer, stands in front of a group, does a wonderful session. It's a different skill set that you actually need to provide quality online support. Remote engagement through a video link or Skype requires a particular skill set, quite different to, if you like, a sort of traditional sort of teaching role.
One final question for you. As you say, you've got a lot of apprenticeships, particularly nationally. Is there anything that employers can do for you? You've got the audience here. If there's one thing that you could see from employers, what would that be to help us, particularly in Wolverhampton, really like what we're doing?
I think for me, the clear key message is all about thinking where you need your business to be in 6, 12, 18 months' time. And it's about almost biting the bullet and actually making that commitment and that investment in apprenticeships or skills development within your organisation. Now, it's difficult, and yes, it's going to be difficult for the next sort of few months, but actually it's very much sort of you reap what you sow, in the sense that invest in the skills and the abilities now, and you will absolutely have a stronger, more resilient organisation 12, 18 months down the line.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Julie, you've heard from a couple of providers, and I've thrown in a couple of comments. Is there anything, just finally, from the WMCA that you'd like to say to the employers out there about, you know?
Thanks, Matt. I think that the key thing is always get in touch, if not with us, with your local college or your training provider or your local authority if you're not already working with them. One of the opportunities we have in a devolved area, apologies for the technical term, is we have freedoms and flexibilities about how we use our skills training budget. We don't have to stick to national rules, and hopefully, Mel, one of the things we've been doing a lot of with you is looking at what is it employers really need for their staff. So coming back to Chris's point, always, are you struggling to recruit? Are you struggling to retrain? Have you got gaps in your knowledge base around digital, for example? And it's worth a conversation, because what we want to do is use that skills money to, coming back to what I said at the start, get more people into jobs and more people progressing in good jobs. So actually, that's what that money is there to use. That doesn't mean we'll fund everything an employer would want or a business would want. There's certainly a lot more flexibility that we can do, and particularly now, this is the moment for us to take a few risks, to be brave, to be innovative, to look at, well, what are the new sectors emerging or the new skills needs? What might a different course look like? And I think particularly with adults, exactly as Joanne said earlier, people are feeling a little bit reticent. So this might be the time when adults might want to think about retraining, new careers. It might be about people getting the skills that, now they can invest a bit of time in that. So we would always say, talk to your local college or training provider, your adult ed, if you're already in a relationship with them. But start with, what is it you need as a business, and how can we help you with the right kind of training? Thanks very much. Julie, we've talked about relighting the city. Is there one or two things that you would just like to finish on? Just to actually say to the audience, say to the employers about what this city needs to do. So I think that recent experience has shown that as a city, as a region, we've been incredibly resilient. We've come together across private and public sectors. I think continue to work constructively, collaboratively, invest in skills, invest in talent.
Thanks very much. Joanne, is there one or two things you'd like us to take away from today that really will help us to relight the city? We had a great discussion, lots and lots of things, but is there one or two things you just want to leave with the employers?
Yeah, I think it's about collaboration and partnerships and strengthening those and being brave. I think we need to be courageous in the next phase of recovery.
Okay, thanks Chris. It's been a really good discussion and covered a lot of topics, but is there one or maybe two things that you'd like to leave with the audience today that you think we need to do to truly relight the city?
Yeah, I think certainly for every employer, I think it's not just about the skills that you need in your business now. It is looking forward 12, 18 months, the skills that you actually need then, and now's the time to be investing in them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Welcome back. I'm now going to turn to Louise Fall, who's Vice Principal at City of Wolverhampton College. Louise, welcome.
Welcome.
How has the college adapted to lockdown? And how have you continued to support students through that process?
Okay, we had to react to lockdown pretty quickly. We had to provide staff with equipment and training to enable all our learning to go online. And that's exactly what we did. We began teaching through using Teams, through Zoom, through using virtual learning environments, education technologies, just to ensure learning took place, giving students structure to ensure that they were getting normal life in a very difficult and different times. Really positive engagement, students were really on board with everything, and so were staff, so it was really quite a positive time. We actually opened the college into different phases during lockdown to support our most vulnerable students, particularly those with high complex needs, so they could get some structure and some support in this difficult time. We also was able to open the college to support students with practical assessments so they could complete their qualifications, so they at least could get achievement from a very challenging year. We're now fully reopened.
Okay.
We've been able to welcome back our existing students and our new students in a very safe environment. We've put in different measures and protocols to ensure the safety of students, staff, apprentices and visitors. And some of those measures are temperature checking on entrance. Some of those are making sure there's a safe flow around the buildings. Also as well wearing masks, because we want to ensure that there's safety at all times as our bubbles are forming, as new students are joining us every day.
Okay, I mean, that's for employers then. I mean, the message is that not just the college, but other training providers and the university, they are a safe place, and you're making sure that that's a safe place.
Absolutely. We want to ensure that learning takes place, but in a safe environment. So we're reacting, we're adapting, but with students coming through the doors, with visitors arriving, and information coming back from employers, everyone's quite happy with the measures we've put in place, and learning can begin again.
Great, okay, in my position, that's a good thing to hear then, isn't it? So just moving on a little, we're fully open, you're fully open, which is fantastic. What are you doing then? We've heard from Julie from WMCA and the efforts that the government and they are putting into regional skills and local skills, and particularly funding. What are the kind of things that you're doing in the short term now to support particularly employers?
Okay, well obviously our curriculum offer is very rich and it's growing, and that's in response to local and regional priorities. We're working quite closely with the West Midlands Combined Authority to form sector work-based academies.
That's the one, SWBA, yeah. We're full of acronyms, aren't we, in education? Sorry to you guys. But
And gateway projects, in particular the high priority areas such as manufacturing, construction, engineering and digital. And we've been able to really support people who need to retrain, to get career opportunities through different programmes such as groundworks and plant. We've also done training courses to support the installation and maintenance of rail track, and more recently skimming for plasterboards. So when people come on the training courses, they are site ready, they're employable.
Okay, and the real important thing around that, the SWBA, is actually what we're doing is we're making people work ready.
Absolutely.
This is not just general education, this is actually a course that after 14 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever, you are moving into a job.
Absolutely.
Seeing that on the railway, did you say particularly?
Absolutely, yeah. It's about making sure that they get the skills, but also the support to be able to change career if need be, or actually enter these new areas, because there's such high priority. There's jobs out there that we want to support in filling.
Okay, and for the employers out there, if there was one thing that you could say to the employers or one ask, what would that be?
I think it's about supporting all individuals to have the opportunity to retrain. It's a chance for everybody. Some people may be older, some people may think that they haven't got the skill set. It's providing the opportunities in an environment such as the college where it's safe to learn and doable.
Yeah, and that will impact on the bottom line. As Julie said, there's a lot of funding out there for employers to tap into, apprenticeships, Kickstart, and we are ready and waiting. And we've heard from BCTG and Joanne at Adult Ed. It really is about helping to support the city in the economic recovery, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's one thing actually at the moment that the college is doing to support 18 and 19-year-olds.
Okay.
These are individuals who may have had difficulties through losing their jobs through COVID, or actually plans have changed. So we've got an offer that allows them to access free learning, and again in high priority areas.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Louise. I'm now going to turn to Christina Blakely from the university. I'm going to read your title. It's Strategic Business Development Manager, Skills, University of Wolverhampton. Welcome to Wolverhampton as well.
Thank you very much.
I believe you're quite new to the area as well, aren't you?
I am indeed. I started my job just as lockdown commenced, so I haven't been in Wolverhampton for very long.
Excellent. Well, good to have you here today. I mean, we've seen there's lots of changes happening in the city. From the university's point of view, this is the time of the year when you get a lot of overseas students coming back. Is that happening, and what kind of challenges does that give you in terms of making sure that everybody's safe?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a challenging time for everyone, and we're in a really lucky position almost, because we've had the past 3 or 4 months to really carefully plan how we bring home and international students back onto campus, so they can access all the opportunities that standard years would offer them. Because we're also very aware that a number of learners have had significant disadvantages as they've been finishing and transitioning to university.
Absolutely.
So we need to make it seamless for them and make sure that they are supported. So we've got a range of measures in place. So it runs from, matching accommodation to course areas so that they're working in bubbles and living in bubbles as well if they're staying in our accommodation, right the way through to hand sanitizer stations, one-way systems around the university, clear signage for everyone. We've changed the way we welcome the students onto campus, so the welcome week's been completely redesigned, so they still get that social interaction, but it's done in a COVID secure and safe way. And the priority for us is to make sure that not only are our students safe and feel safe on campus, but they've got access to everything that they would have had access to before, maybe in a slightly different way for some students, but particularly for those lab spaces and the practical and the vocational courses, they're still getting that quality learning experience, and also making sure that they feel supported during that journey, because it has been a really trying year for everybody, and all of our new and returning students will be feeling the same way.
Yeah, again, we've made the point earlier on, but for employers out there, it's about feeling that if you've got an employee, they're safe, whether they're at the college, the university, or training providers. I mean, the links into industry and into employers in the city are very, very important, and things are shifting quite quickly, aren't they? Christina, from the university's point of view, what are you seeing on the ground, and how are you able to react to that and actually support what we keep saying, which is relight our city?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the lucky things at the moment, again, is we've all had umpteen amounts of time to actually start to gather data for employers to feed their information through to us, and not just through to the university, but through to other organisations such as the Federation of Small Businesses, the Chambers, Make UK. They've all been doing surveys about what business need is going to be now, and also in the next 12 months to 2 years, so that we can plan and provide a solution for them effectively. So we recently launched our own business need snapshot, so we can actually understand what our employers have been going through over the past 6 months, where their direction of travel is, and what they're going to be looking to develop in the future. What we're seeing is really, really clear patterns. We're not seeing a massive reduction in employers or employees. We're not seeing massive changes, but we are seeing the need for them to consolidate what they've already got. So they've gone from a period of growth into looking to maintain what they've got. And that will be savings around efficiencies and productivity, and looking to do things better or do things differently rather than do less, which is a good sign. That's less of a constricting for the economy. But what we're also seeing is priorities around reevaluating their business models, looking at their business strategies, looking at diversification, so new product launches. And we've had this, I don't want to call it wonderful because it's been really trying, but there are some real leading light innovations that are coming from different sectors where they've had to do it differently. So how do we maintain that? How do we manage to take those innovations and cascade it through to other sectors or through to other businesses in that industry, and almost disrupt the sectors as they stand, to say, actually, this is the new normal. How do we make the most of that for our region and for our economy? And there's some really great examples of that.
Right. Could you give us one? You've got an audience
exactly.
here, you know,
So,
let's use it as an advertisement.
Straight in the middle. No, we've been working with a company that had to redesign their ventilator systems to be able to actually adhere to what the NHS were asking for at the time. That's actually meant that they've changed up their entire production line. Now, it's been a change that they've had to make, but they've made efficiencies and savings in doing so, so that will be their new way of operating going forwards. We've got a number of companies we're talking to about how they revitalise their office spaces. And that's not just about being able to say, well, we need to reduce our office space. We don't want to have as much of it because of team working. We've invested in this digital infrastructure. How do we use that? It's also about saying, well, if you're not going to use that office space, what's the impact on the economy around you? How do we then change the economy of town planning to say that actually we still want to revitalise that area, but office space might not be the best for it? And how do companies come up with their own solutions for that, particularly if they own that office space? What else can they do with that to the best of their ability? It's looking at our science parks and saying, how do we make the most of the science park opportunities for businesses to invest, change premises? The city centre working is going to change, we know that. So how do we make sure we keep the lifeblood in the city while still investing and growing the economy in the right way? So there's lots of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of knowing the direction of travel that companies want to take. And one of the biggest challenges we get is getting that information and being able to be that support service to companies and say, look, if you've got an idea, you want to look at your strategy, you're not quite sure where to go with this, you need to look at competitive intelligence or at market intelligence, come and have a chat with us. Even if it's not something as a university we provide, the one good thing about the region is we all work together.
Yeah.
So we're able to share that information with the colleges, with the training providers, and find solutions that maybe aren't obvious to a business owner.
No, there's some great collaboration going on. I mean, and it's interesting for both of you, really, the short-term measures that we've got to take, but just thinking long-term, and how do we actually shift what the college does and the university does. So Louise, from a college's point of view, what are you planning to do in the long term to, you know, COVID won't be here forever, hopefully, and the economy will recover and we will be moving forward. So what are your plans going forward for a more long-term investment?
Well, it's still working with employers to make sure we're delivering the right skills, the right development, but also it's investing in our own premises to have a purpose-built city centre campus that can really support students to learn in state-of-the-art technologies and environment, but also investing in our Wellington Road campus, and we want that to be over in Bilston. Yeah, we want that to be about the technologies, you know, a real centre of excellence. So for engineering, motor vehicle, to make sure that people again are being able to train in state-of-the-art environment with industrial relevant equipment.
Yeah, and I think the footfall in the city is as important as the education as well, that investment, and that we are getting support from lots and lots of agencies and outside bodies, particularly the City Council. And I think we all see that actually developing the City Learning Quarter, as we're calling it, is about footfall and it's about regeneration. But yeah, particularly around the engineering motor vehicle moving to really create a technical centre in Bilston as well. I think that's going to be fantastic. From the university's point of view, Christina, long-term plans to kind of shift what you do. What are the exciting kind of sectors that you think in the next few years?
So we're actually we're investing in quite a number of different sectors in different regions. So one of the keys for the university is place-based learning. Is to make sure that the local population can access the relevant skills that the region need, but down to that local level. So we're not talking about the West Midlands as a whole region, we're talking about subsections within that. So we've got the new cybersecurity centre that's going to be opening up in Hereford. Which is designed to not only promote incubation for cybersecurity companies and SMEs, but also to really uplift some of those higher level skills that are driven by the needs in that area. Defence and MOD and so forth will be key to that. We've got the Springfield development, which has been everywhere.
I would have said it if you didn't promote it.
Oh, don't worry, I can't wait to actually go and visit because it looks absolutely amazing from some of the virtual tours I've seen. And that's going to be leading light in higher level construction skills and built environment, and looking towards that new digital technology that's going to impact on that industry in the future. And that's really a next 10, 15 year investment, because we're talking about taking traditional skills and how do we manage that so that those higher level skills that we know are present in the industry and the advances in technology that we know the industry wants, how do we merge that together along with the colleges to make sure that we've got that pipeline and progression through for the industry to continue to grow, not just in the UK and not just in the West Midlands, but globally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking earlier on about collaboration being important. Joanne was saying about the learning platforms out in the community, and I think one of the things that's impressed me since I've been in Wolverhampton, certainly around the providers, is we do tend to, you know, sometimes we're competing, sometimes there's overlap, but we are all genuinely working together for the good of the local residents. And you know, some of the things that are going on behind the scenes at the moment between the college and the university, I know when they go public in the next couple of months or so, are going to be really fantastic, because you're absolutely right. It's about, you know, capturing young people, adults locally, and keeping them in the jobs. You know, the NHS is a very good example. I think our biggest growth in adults this year is probably access to HE around health and social care, isn't it? And around nursing, which, you know, the university's absolutely pushing on. So Springfield, our construction just links into it. It's seamless. You know, we're doing the trades, you're doing the higher stuff, and that's what it's about for the city. And I hope, you know, over the next few years, when we get through this, employers will see that there is a real willingness to work together on behalf of employers and residents of Wolverhampton, because, you know, relighting this city is basically what it's all about. I mean, is there anything, two last things that you want to both leave the employers with? Louise, is there...
Yeah, the college's purpose is about defining futures. If anybody needs support and guidance, we've got a trained team of career advisors who can map out the steps to provide guidance about what people need to do to perhaps retrain or perhaps think about a different career and those opportunities that are available to them.
Okay. Christina from the university.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo your point on that side of things. I think there's going to be an awful lot of opportunities for individuals out there to try the career that they were always told they couldn't have, to start from scratch, which can sometimes seem daunting, but other times it actually provides a brilliant opportunity. When you're pushed into it, sometimes you can, you know, make your dreams come true in a sense. I think I'd also encourage employees to get in touch with the providers, to have a conversation that's open-ended, that says, look, this is what we're thinking, this is what we might be facing, what's out there, how can we help, and to get involved with the education providers, because we are here to serve not just the local community but the local employers. So if we don't know what's going on, we can't develop the solutions and work with them to do that. So I would encourage them to make contact and have that conversation with us.
Absolutely, and thank you both. It's been really interesting. Thanks to Christina, to Louise, also thanks to Julie for coming in from the WMCA to give us an idea of the context, from Joanne from Adult Education to talk to us about how they're changing what they do for the city and to support adults, particularly in the city. And thanks also to Chris from BCTG, a major training provider. I think hopefully as an audience you can see that there are a number of us working together, and we want to support you as employers. And as Christina said, you know, we're not successful if you're not successful. If you've got skills gaps, if what we're doing in the college is not providing you with a level of technical or even the rounder skills, then we're not doing our jobs. And I hope you've seen today that there is opportunities. And as I said earlier on, this isn't about advertising any one provider. If I could ask you at the moment one thing from my point of view, please get engaged in retraining and training your staff, because, you know, we're not at the low point, in my opinion, yet in terms of furloughing, in terms of staff, and we need to do something really, really radical for this city. And I hope you've heard that you've got some flexible people here today on the panel who'll be able to work with you going forward. Thank you very much.